All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Songtrust Spotlight. We're celebrating Blackness in music today. Cool. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me introduce myself first. My name is George Clark. I've been at Songtrust for just under 3 years now. I work as a music publishing specialist in the client acquisition department. Essentially, I just help people learn what it takes to collect all of their royalties, right? How to set themselves up properly. I also do some work at our parent company downtown in our revenue and licensing department. And I hold a chair position at downtown's first ERG, Employee Resource Group, Black Power in Music, BPM. Wearing the badge I had to represent today. I'm the chair of communications there. Thanks, Will. But that's enough about me. I want to introduce our two guests that we have here real quick, or give them a chance to introduce themselves at least. Emmavie, I was hoping you could start us off and just give us a little bit about yourself, just an intro, as well as maybe answer our first question, which is what or who inspired you to first get into music?
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Emmavie and I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, and like kind of a pretend DJ from London. I do a lot of I'm going to call it alternative soul and future R&B music, but it's inspired by jazz, hip hop, some punk now actually, and like indie music. I'm trying to like expand and spread my wings. What inspired me to get into music and who? When I was younger, I would put it a lot down to 90s R&B and the early 2000s. So people like Missy Elliott, Pharrell especially, Timbaland, Erykah Badu, Bilal, D'Angelo. Those are who I was listening to. But the actual thing that led me to making music is I was quite a quiet kid when I was younger. I was like super shy, a bit of a recluse. And I think I just found it a bit difficult to, I don't know, find a way to share and express my feelings and communicate. So then as soon as I discovered creativity, I realized that was like a really good outlet for a lot of the things I was feeling and wanting to say, but couldn't just say directly to people. And then now I've done a bit of soul searching a lot of years later on. Now I'm like, I realized music was for many years actually just a form of escapism for me. So I think maybe I abused creativity a bit and use it to remove myself from reality a little bit. And yeah, but that's enough about me.
Thank you. Will, did you want to jump in?
What's good, y'all? My name's Will Gittens. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally, by way of Nashville, then Boston, then Atlanta. So now I'm in Los Angeles, California. I'm a singer-songwriter, producer, musician as well. And what got me inspired to do music actually is my father. Growing up, my dad was a very big person in the country I'm from. And he was very influential in the music scene down there. And he actually was one of the first artists to sign a record deal in Trinidad. And so growing up, I saw my dad, actually the years that I'm in right now is when my dad was my father. So I saw him in his prime growing up, and he created such an environment for music that he didn't even force any of me and my other siblings into music. But the environment was so rich in music that I automatically just fell into that mold that he created for us. And so yeah, I would say that my biggest influence initially is my father.
That's awesome. That's deep. That's
nice.
deep. And Will, how would you describe your style as an artist, if you had to, which you do, because I just asked.
Because a lot of the times in this industry they try to frown upon versatility, but I want to be a pioneer and artist in that genre of versatility where I just told you guys I'm from the islands, and then I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, then Boston, then Atlanta, now I'm in Los Angeles. So it's like, how are you supposed to tell me what my music is going to sound like? Like Emmavie, I love R&B. I actually have a Afro Island album dropping soon.
Cool.
I think that's going to be something that's new that nobody's ever heard before. I also do acoustic songs and stuff like that. So it's really no genre I haven't touched right now. And so that's what I want to be known for, which is just the first artist that could successfully versatile put out these different genres and be successful,
That's dope. Yeah, one of the first things I noticed about your profiles, Will, was how many acoustic covers you have out, man. Like I respect the hustle for sure. Your YouTube
I
is crazy,
I, I appreciate that.
no doubt. And Emma V, I know you're pretty versatile as well, but if you had to pin it down, what would you say? Like, what's your style? What's your philosophy as an artist?
Um, I'd separate those two things. I think my
Sure.
style has come like through experimentation because I got into music without a musical background. I don't have a real like strong music theory base, and I didn't come up classically trained or anything. So it was like I've learnt music by ear and just imitating what I'm absorbing and like my environment. So that kind of is the foundation of my style, just the music that I love and imitating that. But then my philosophy, um, it's a mixture of things. I think I try and create music that's an ode to those things that I've absorbed. And I want to push the boat forward. So as an artist, separate to the sound that I'm making, I'm always trying to, well, like Will said, not get boxed in and try and do stuff that hasn't been done before, but also never say that I don't have influences because it would just be a complete lie. I mean, you can hear in my music, I think a lot of people say they can hear Flowetry and then they can hear the Neptunes, but I'm trying to fuse that with now we've got drill music that's really popular, even though I'm not a driller and I'm not in that kind of community. It's just the sound and the energy there. I'm always trying to absorb something and just like transform it and or reimagine it in the way that I'm hearing it, so I can take drill music and give it to my neo soul fans, because do you know what I mean, it's that sort of thing. So my philosophy is just absorb from around me and like be unstoppable in that, and then use music to just keep pushing the boat forward, and I feel like that's just going to keep opening doors for not just myself but like anyone after me.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you start producing or on the mic first? Like, what was your
Uh,
first thing?
it was production first. So I was
Okay.
actually dancing before anything. I used to dance. I don't dance anymore. And I'm like, I want to go back to dancing. I'm just like stiff as hell now. So I don't know if I can. But I actually got just became curious with the idea of producing my own music to dance to, because I was watching things like You Got Served and I was just like, oh wait, you don't have to just dance to music that exists. They've got like music made especially for these dances, but I couldn't like get my head around how that was done. Then I was just like, I'm pretty sure people make beats, but I'm gonna show my age. This is back before there was YouTube, so I couldn't go and find videos of people making beats. So then I just started like trying to figure out how to make my own beats and teach myself how to use music production software. I will say I cracked a lot of the softwares. Don't do that, buy it. But I was like 13 years old and just using FL Studio. Then I became quite obsessed with producing. So then I was just like, okay, I like the sound of this music and I love music in general because I'm a dancer. Let me start writing the songs. And then the singing came. And then, yeah, then I feel like the singing kind of took over because I don't know, I'm not so sure why that happened, but people recognize me a bit more as a singer than they do a producer. Right,
I
yeah.
see. I see. Yeah, I mean, your voice is very unique, so I think maybe that's why, you know.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you for that. Do we have BEKA?
Hello, y'all.
Hey.
BEKA, welcome. How are you today?
I'm so great. We've had a little heat wave here and I've just come back from the West Indies. So the heat wave in England is making me feel like I'm still away. I'm living that fake life, getting my toes out ahead of the season, that kind of thing.
Nice.
So I'm great.
Awesome.
How are you?
Yeah, we're doing well. We're doing well. We
Good,
just got into it. We just started. So we were just doing introductions. If you'd like, you could provide us a quick intro and just let us know what or who inspired you to get into music.
Yeah, so I'm BEKA. I'm an artist, I'm a writer, and do you know what? I grew up on a lot of Quincy Jones. That was like the only thing we had is the MJ album, Quincy Jones, Back on the Block, a lot of Stevie Wonder. And I really remember as a child being really moved by Stevie's Songs in the Key of Life, like by his lyrics. And I think when you're a child, you sometimes move by music, but it's not a very regular thing. So I think for me, growing up with no pop music really, and just these like incredible 80s sounds, a lot of jazz and a lot of music that you want to dance to was definitely my influence, I think. And at the time, it wasn't even something I thought I could do. You know, when you're watching Michael Jackson, I used to close the door in our living room and we had this frosted window, and I just dance and wanted to be a choreographer as a child, was super inspired. But I think now I look back and think, you know, if those are your formation years and you're being formed by things like, you know, Quincy Jones in his production kicking ass years, it's going to do something good for your ears.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Will, I wanted to bring you into the conversation and ask what drives you to create, or how do you define success for yourself in your music?
Oh, that's very, very interesting question. I love the question. Actually, my drive is honestly my family. And I have a very large family. I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers. And both my parents are still together, 33 years of marriage. And so family is a very big thing for me. It's the only thing that has remained consistent and constant in my life. Like I've lost friends. I've lost a lot of things happened in my life that went wrong, but I felt like having the kind of family I did was the only thing that I'm like, is my cheat code, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so it's not even my extended, it's like I was born into poverty in Trinidad, you know? And actually, when I was born, everything was lit. You know what I'm saying? That's why one of my names is called Adini, which is a Nigerian name for wealth, because when I was born is when my dad signed that record deal in Trinidad, and everything was awesome. But I was saying just the origin of my last name is dirt yard, poverty of the country I come from. And so my dad did an amazing job, and he always taught me, I was a young kid, he's like, life is just a race, and he had the baton, and then he's passing it on to us, this next generation. And I think instilling that value in me as a young kid, that's what gives me the drive, you know what I'm saying? Because I am consciously thinking about that baton, and I have to run my race and hand it to my future generations. And so the kind of passion and the drive I have on social media and my music, I feel like people hear that and they feel that, and it's mainly stemming from my family. And I'm just inspired by life itself, man. I'm a people person. I love people. And like Emmavie, I'm a sponge to life and a sponge to music. So it's like I even went to music school. And at the time, I wasn't classically trained either. I played a lot of stuff by ear. But when I went to Berklee School of Music, I was, instead of being intimidated by so many people better than me, I was a sponge to it. And I was like, hey, man, you're far greater than me, but teach me what you did, instead of, man, this person's better than me. Let me like get my little hermit crab shell and break down. But so, yeah, I don't even know if I answered the question.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Family is a huge drive for me as well. And BEKA, quickly, I wanted to go to you because I've read about you talking about the importance of having a why, right? Having a why, having a drive behind what you do. And funny enough, when I was reading it, it made me think of this most recent documentary that came out about Michael Jordan. There's a moment in that doc where they've memed, of course, they've memed it away, but it's him essentially making up an insult that one of his opponents said to him to drive himself. And that's mental, right? That's like sick. Like that's out of the ordinary. But can you speak a little bit to what goes into choosing an appropriate drive for you?
For sure. I think when I kind of was embarking on the whole artist journey on my own, I was doing backing vocals for some dear friends called Han, and they were like, why don't you do this on your own? And for my whole life, I'd collaborated in a duo format and with other people writing. And the idea of doing it on my own was like overwhelming, because I felt that there were so many other, I think to quote myself, I was like, there's so many other brown girls out there trying to sing. And no, shouts out to all the brown girls, by the way. But yeah, there were so many other people like me. And I think, and then I went on to say to them, but what I love about music is what music does in culture, and that it can take you in an emotion and give you something for 3 minutes of healing. And then when that song closes, you can park that. And if you need to get back into that space, you can just press play. And I love that it's the thing that, you know, moves whole countries to do things. It brings people together. And they were like, well, why don't you just do that the way that you want to do it? And I think it was really this breaking of a glass ceiling moment for me, where I realized a lot of the imposter syndrome that I had and a lot of the dreams that I had could one go and the other be accessed. So I kind of allowed myself to give myself the space to be honest about what I wanted for music. And I think for me, I love that music allows people to hear about different people's perspectives and experiences. And when we hear about people's perspectives and experiences, we grow in this empathy. And when we grow in empathy, we have compassion for people. And that's what stops things like, you know, on a grand scale, wars, and on a little scale, you know, things like, you know, our casual racism. It's the thing that, you know, forms us. It's the thing that drives us, having this empathy for people. And so getting space to just create conversation really is a big why for me, because I know in my own life, with the eclectic things that have brought me up, getting to hear about different people's experiences has been really powerful for me. I think we're all driven by a why, be that, you know, some of us might say we think that, oh, we're driven by money, but really it might be that underlying that money drive is actually you just really want to be able to provide for your family, and you wouldn't identify with that. So I think having that deep dive that goes into the fear for a moment and sort of says, gosh, in this tiny life that I have, on this tiny little speck in the universe, where I'll be remembered by the way that I made people feel and the few things I've done, what is the point? And I think I was hearing another artist today saying about how comparison is the thief of joy. And I think unless you have identified your own sense of cause, by Tuesday at 4 p.m, when you've gone on your gram and you've seen however many other people are smashing it, however many TikToks you've been unable to do because you don't understand the flipping app, all this stuff, you know, you will crumble. So for me, I admire people who can just do it because they just love music, and they don't have a why. But I think it's identifying that we're all driven by that, and so giving yourself some space to admit it and work out what those things are, maybe even pivot them if they need pivoting, so that Tuesday 4 p.m. you're still rocking.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's beautiful. I want to transition to something a little bit more practical, Emmavie. On the same kind of thread line, we're talking about collaboration and influence from other people. Yeah. I saw a clip of you where you were talking about walking into studios and being expected to know how to use certain gear, especially by male engineers, right? Yeah. And I wanted to talk to you about what are your tips for, we have a ton of artists, songwriters, producers in the room. What are your tips for going into a collaboration or going into a studio session where you don't know anybody? You're getting to know people for the first time.
It's interesting that you brought up the quote of me saying, well, it's interesting. Let me backtrack a little bit. It's interesting thinking about that right now that I'm managing a building that has 38 studios in it, and I'm like the main engineer and the site tech and the person who like opens things up and fixes it now, and then also just sits with artists and like A&Rs and says this should be like this as well. And that transition for me has only been like the last few months, where I've learned the more like, the product side of like studio equipment, like the actual insides. I've known the technical stuff about music production, but not always known how to plug things in. Now I'm kind of the expert on that. And I think the first piece of advice I'd give to any artist, regardless of what it is you want to be when you go into the studio, is ask questions. And like, there aren't any stupid questions. I think people, without meaning to, like, my experience is always, because I'm quite like, I dress like a boy a lot of the time, and I've got like a masculine energy. It is always this, I walk into the studio and people just expect I know what I'm doing, because that's how I think men treat each other in that way. Like, I'm like, yeah, boss, you know what to do. Like I said, people just smack me on the back, go ahead. And I'm faced with a patch bay and I'm like, I have no clue how to plug any of this stuff in. I do now, but the like hundreds of times I've gone into a studio and people haven't offered me any assistance, like, it's daunting. But like, I've just learned, you just have to say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here, and can I learn? Because depending on how you learn, this stuff is actually a lot simpler if someone puts it to you in a clear way. And I'm been doing a lot of teaching recently, I've been doing a lot of workshops and just like getting people up to speed with how you can be self-sufficient in producing your own music and recording yourself and things like that. So the first thing I'd say is ask questions. In terms of collaborating with people, I find, and everyone's different because I've done a lot of writing camps recently, and I was talking about this yesterday with a group of people, is I find I prefer when I go into a studio space and we have a conversation like this, where you just break the ice immediately and you get to understand the people that you're in the room with. And not all songwriting camps are set up like that, or not all sessions are set up like that, because sometimes you might have a manager and the other artist has a manager. Only the managers have spoken before you've gone into the room, and you only have 5 hours and they're expecting a hit. You've been paid, the other person's been paid, and it's like you're on a time limit and you haven't even got the space or time to gel. You might not gel. That's another thing. It's just a reality. I have gone and met people I don't know, and I've maybe taken the time to listen to their music, and they've not been as interested to like learn anything about me before coming into that space. So then there is this kind of like, oh, you don't want to get to know me. Let's just get to work, and we don't even really know what we're doing here. We're just expected to make a hit song or something like that. So I'd say like try and be human in that space. Try and bring yourself. I know that's also difficult because we're artists, we're sensitive and we're vulnerable, and like if you're like me, I was making music in the beginning just to kind of like have an alter ego somewhere else I could like express myself, because I wasn't the most confident person when I was younger. So like I now I don't have like social anxiety, but I definitely did when I was younger. When I was a new artist and I wasn't so sure of myself and I wasn't so confident in what I was doing, going into sessions with people is so intimidating, because you're like, I still make bad music now. Like I can definitely still make a bad song. So to do that in front of people is daunting. And like, but that's why you have to just be human and say, hey, I'm not perfect and this can go any way. If we vibe, the thing about catching a vibe with people and just enjoying being in that space is you're having fun. So regardless of how it's going and how it's happening, you're enjoying that moment with them, and that often like breeds the best ideas. Sometimes it doesn't. I've been in sessions with people and like after 6 hours we've talked more than we've made music, and we've pressed play and it's been really bad. But at least we broke the ice. The next time we went into the session, we've realized how best we work. Maybe we needed a day to just go out to lunch first before going into the studio, so that we've like done the thing where we're not wasting studio time, getting to know each other. But yeah, I talked a lot. I'm not so sure if I answered the question.
No, I feel you though. I feel you. Yeah, you know, music is hard. I think a lot of people like miss that, right? It's just inherently hard to do, hard to create a good song. And on top of that, you could be creating forever. And still, even if you have good music, there's this whole other industry part of it, right, that we all have to deal with.
Exactly.
And Will, I've seen you say in a couple of different places that you've kind of had a long road to where you are now. And like I said before, I've seen like your hustle, like your YouTube is crazy. Like you have so many videos, right? And then I want to talk to you a little bit about what you do to continue. Like, is there anything that you do specifically to refresh yourself and to keep yourself creatively productive?
Yes, I do. But before I say that, BEKA touched on it earlier. It's us being brown people in this music industry. It's a blessing that every other race thinks that we are just naturally supposed to be freaking Michael Jackson or Stevie Wonder. You know what I'm saying? And so, and the thing is, it's like I, as a Black man, only know my experience, and I could only imagine, like Emmavie was saying, being a woman in this space where it's predominantly males in those positions. You know what I'm saying? And that what that feels like. But us in general is like I sing and I play a guitar acoustically. They would 5 times over sign a Shawn Mendes or Justin Bieber over me just by of the marketability of them, when we are just as marketable. But you know how that goes, you know what I'm saying? But for me, to answer your question, what keeps me going is actually the people that I've reached and them reaching out to me. Sometimes throughout my journey in music, people don't even know that I was like, what's the point? And I don't know if you guys experience this stuff too, but even if you're as confident as me, I'm a very confident person, but there's been certain times, because I do music full time, that I'm like, this is for the birds. I don't want to do this anymore. I am literally running myself down. Like, I am working hard and I feel like nothing's coming of it. I'm writing songs. No one wants to listen. And it just takes that one person that sends you a DM is like, hey, you saved my life with this song. And you're just like, and you can't, and then you just freeze in that moment. And sometimes it's just like, it's a moment between me and God. And I have to be like, man, who am I? Like, because I feel like life is all about perspective. It's like, I'm sitting there complaining that I'm not there yet, but there's someone that's looking at my social media, looking at my drive and my purpose, and feels so inspired by that. You know what I'm saying? But you don't see yourself in that light because you're just so focused on what your ideal is. But there's something that I learned a couple of years ago that changed my whole perspective of life. And it's something by this guy named Earl Nightingale. And he said that success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And when I heard that, I didn't really understand it. But when you break it down, it's like, once you figure out what that goal is in life and you're constantly pursuing that drive, you're already successful. And when I learned that, it changed my life because I used to be like the destination. But the crazy thing is I didn't even know what that destination is. And so it just taught me to that the journey is the thing that makes you successful. So if you're already, man, I want to be this, I want to be that, and you're every single day, it's real to you and you're pursuing that to a certain level, you're successful. And so anybody on this panel right now, I guess that feels that they're not successful, just kind of go on and look at what you're really doing and change that perspective if you're consistently progressing and just trying to figure out what you want to do in life, you know?
Yeah, that's deep. And it's interesting that you bring up this point about, you know, especially being a Black artist, especially being melanated, right? I have a question that I want to pose to all of you about our responsibilities, right? So do you feel that it's important as a Black artist to be an activist? BEKA, can you start us off?
Yeah, I think I was having this conversation recently, actually, that for me, a lot of my music came out, the whole thing came out in lockdown. So it started in lockdown. So I'm having these sessions prior to that writing, then we lock down and my kind of debut music comes out. And I think being a mixed race person is also really fascinating because in the way I've experienced it, just to be really like explicit, it's like you're almost a palatable version of a Black person to people who are like, to people who are white, very often in my experience, which is fascinating. And I think in my family, both my parents are mixed race. So we have this like mad mixed race pride going on in the family, and talking about where we come from is very common. So my dad's side of the family my dad's adopted and he's a mixed race guy, Nigerian dad, white British mum's side, West Indian dad and white British mother. So talking about where I'm from, race, how that makes me, all those things are always very common. But in these sessions, when I've been going through the last 2 years where we've had, you know, mass global conversation suddenly about race, Black people are being put in positions they should have been in for years. Also for, I guess, the whole global conversation, suddenly I think for Black people, we're going, hang on a minute, why do I allow for these crazy things that are incredibly traumatic, that I've been through for my whole life, that I've always pushed down? Gosh, that's coming up for me as well. So it's been a tumultuous, wild time. I say all of that to say, then when I've been in my sessions, that's what's coming out. And I think for me, as someone who's always been very comfortable having these conversations and also recognizes that I probably have a way to be able to speak into them where some of my other friends don't, I do carry a sense of responsibility. But for me, it's a real honor because it's just the reality of my life. A little story, I had this in the Oscars, when the Oscars were happening, somebody won this makeup award and it was a Black woman, and there was somebody else with her. I think I can't remember what her heritage was, but she wasn't a white woman. And they get up and they say, we are breaking glass ceilings. We can see Aboriginal women coming after us. We see Black trans women coming after us. And they make this phenomenal speech. And it moved me so much. And that day I had a session with this wonderful writer, middle class, middle-aged white male. And I went into the session, never met him before. And I was like spouting, like fizzing over with this sort of like, whoa, how are we breaking glass ceilings in 2021 when you are only winning a makeup award? Like, this is crazy. This is wrong. And for this guy, a lot of that day was spent for me kind of working through this glazed over face that he had and having to find a way to have this conversation. And I left and I was so emotionally exhausted after the session, but I was also like, this actually here, right here, beyond the song, this is like what's important for me, because there was something in the way that I was able to speak to him that meant we broke through something that things he didn't know he was allowed to talk about, and making that space that says, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to feel like you're being politically correct with me. I'm going to make a space here where where you can say, God, I'd never thought of it like that. I didn't know that. And I have deep empathy for those who feel like, you know what, can I just be a person? Can I not have to advocate for all the different like permutations of my humanity 100%? But I do think that we're in a very fascinating, precious time of life where there's like a pendulum swinging, and being a woman and a woman of color, it's like I just recognize that hopefully if I have children and their children's children, the things that I can be asked to do now will hopefully mean that they don't have to do that, and they don't have to be women awards, they don't have to be specific things for people who fit into my categories. That's a very long-winded answer, but I hope
no, it was a good one. It's interesting, all of the different roles that you have to play depending on your makeup, and I can definitely speak to the mixed race vibes. My grandmother is white, like pure white, and the looks that we get, or like I've had people come up when I was walking with her and ask if she was okay, like all kinds of stuff. It's crazy, all the different kind of characters that we have to play depending on who we are, who we're with. Emmavie, I want to pose kind of the same question to you, and an additional question. I don't know if you are familiar, but this situation came up with Lil Baby this year, where he put out a song, and it was right after George Floyd, right?
Yeah.
And then a week or two later, I think he basically said, "Look, politics is not for me."
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to ask, basically, when do you think activism, especially by Black artists, but also just by people and companies in the culture, becomes performative?
Firstly, can I say, Becca, you answered the previous question so perfectly. You articulated everything that was in my heart and my mind. I was just like, yes, 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 yes. That's literally, there's nothing more that could be said about that. Where it becomes, to answer your question, where it becomes performative is when it's being used to exploit and make money. So I think if the intentions of a company or an artist, if their intentions was creating something or putting messages out into the world aren't pure and aren't actually to get behind a movement, aren't actually to create a system of support, to put out knowledge and just grow the global consciousness, because that's the only way that you can help. And like help, you can't just throw money at things. I think that's what a lot of companies believe you can do, and then turn up during Black History Month and then not show up any other time of the year, and not hit up these artists that you've exploited and these influencers that you've exploited during those months. That's something I've been hearing a lot recently. There are a lot of artists, myself included actually, who only ever get a call from certain companies 2 months of the year. It's Black History Month for me and Pride. And then I'm like, hey guys, remember me when we spoke like 9 months ago and for like 3 days, and you seemed to send me 400 emails in those 3 days, and then after that I like heard nothing from you, and you were so like, get us this on my back. And then when I'm like emailing you to just, hey, do you want to get behind my initiative now, they're ghosts. So yeah, that's when it becomes performative, because I think a lot of companies just want to check a box and be seen to be being conscious and be seen to be involved, and then they're very quick to say they've done their job and move on. And yeah, you'll see it with, it's everywhere. So that's when I think it becomes performative. I think it's a shame when Black artists fall into that, but I think what I would say is I think by default of a lot of our a lot of us, by our like just our identities, we are like existence is just political anyways. I find that when I go into a room, this is a real life thing, and I was thinking about this just yesterday. I feel like I come out like I come out as Black and queer every single day, and it's not even on purpose. It's just in a conversation I realize that I have to bridge a number of gaps a lot of the time just to like make whatever I'm going to say make sense. And then immediately that, and because that's not a lot of people that I come into contact with, then you end up in like a political conversation. I end up having to represent all of Black people, and I end up having to represent all Black queer people, just like every single day, especially because of where I'm based. I'm in studios with hundreds of people coming in and out, and like, it's people from absolutely everywhere. So just by default, without me having read anything, I'm speaking on behalf of an entire race of people, which is dangerous if I don't care, you know. So Becca, you were saying you have to be responsible, because it's like, and it's great that here in this chat we're quite articulate people, and we're comfortable with being vulnerable and having these sorts of conversations. And there are people who aren't prepared to, but by default of who they are, will be put into those spaces, or will become really popular like Lil Baby and just feel like, well, I have an audience of millions of people, so it should be me to speak on this, but won't read a book or actually care before getting on stage and like representing an entire race of people or a group of people. So yeah, there's this like crazy balance where you will just automatically become an ambassador for Black lives just because you're Black, but like you have to ensure that you know whether you're the correct person to have those conversations, whether you know the right things to say, and if you're going to go out there and be sensitive and progressive, or if you're just going to use that moment to like push your own agenda and become more popular, and then never speak on it again, and suddenly say it doesn't matter to you because you're just a person. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everybody has some responsibility too. I remember, you know, everybody was posting those black squares, right? Yeah. On Instagram, and people were getting mad, right? It's like, oh, it's just a black square, you're not doing anything. But at the end of the day, me personally, I think if you're gonna offer something, that's worth something, you know. I like what you said though about the intention, and you know, are you doing it for money? Like, I think the intention is important, whether large or small the act. The intention is always kind of important. And Will, I'd like to get your thoughts on the matter, really either question or a combination of both, about the responsibility as a Black artist and what you think is considered, you know, performative activism.
I would say that the times are so weird, you know what I'm saying? Like, especially with, oh man, I just realized that's something in my bed, I'm sorry. But the times are very weird in with social media, you know, the whole cancel culture and stuff like that. It kind of makes it a little awkward for people to even stand for what they represent without having any type of backlash to their things. And, you know, and I feel like it's important to know what you stand by and know what you value, so that even when people try to convince you that your opinion is wrong or something like that, that you stand firm in that. And so someone like me, I have not been as political and showed people the things that I'm passionate about. But it's almost like I want to wait until I get to a certain part of success to start doing that, in a way to where it's just like, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things in the industry that I want to say, right? That I don't like about A&Rs. I don't like how songwriters are treated and this and that. But for me to say that right now, not having the type of success, because this industry is based on, okay, what have you done to say this to me? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like once I get to the accolades that I know I'm gonna get, that's when I'm gonna have more of an impact on what I say, if that makes any sense. So for me right now, being like, man, these A&Rs don't take these songs when I sent them to them. What's their point? This is not. It's not gonna. It's all that's gonna do is piss off the A&Rs that do follow me or that do think that I'm amazing. You know what I'm saying? But if I get in a position where I'm on a Grammys, at the Grammys making a thing on the mic, that's when you have the influence. And someone like Prince went on there when he had those opportunities to speak on things. He used the greatest scale to do that, where it's like, oh, I'm doing my Grammy speech. This is when I'm gonna tell you all about yourselves. You know what I'm saying? And so I definitely think being passionate about something is what makes us human. So it's kind of interesting when artists don't have any drive or purpose, but hey, you could always tell if an artist is just driven by money, you know? Everyone on this panel so far, when you asked us, we weren't like, man, I just do this for money. If you're gifted and this is what you're put on this earth to do, God will make a way for you to compensate and make money from it anyways. You know what I'm saying? So I'm purpose driven first. And, you know, once you're purpose driven, that the money is going to chase you. So you don't have to chase the money. So I guess that's my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Okay, this next question is pretty general, but yeah, I just want to pose it. So what changes, incremental or pivotal, would you like to see happen in the near future for the music industry? Emmavie, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Incremental changes. I think I'm glad that we're seeing a lot more representation. I do believe, especially following the beginning of Black Lives Matter and that becoming a bumper sticker that a lot of companies have been wearing, that a lot of the representation we're seeing in the media and in music specifically is still performative, because we're still seeing Black artists not being compensated for the things that they're creating, and then white artists ripping them off. And then we're seeing those white artists be paid triple, quadruple the amount, for example, TikTok dancers and like everything, even the way that for a long time, specific to the UK, things like grime and drill music was seen as unmarketable and it was unsignable. And then when you have a few white artists do it, then suddenly it can become really popular music. So I think I want to see Black music being treated with the same respect. And I want to see equity. So I want to see that it's not just a 1 in a million for a Black woman to be successful in, well, everywhere. But I'm going to say specifically in the UK, because whenever I speak to anyone here and I say, can you name a popular or a very famous Black woman out of the UK? Now people can say Little Sims. That's why I'm happy, because I always get Little Sims. But really, like if I was to ask anyone on the planet, no one can name one. I mean, we can name lots of American Black female artists that are really popular. So the rest of the world has a real way to go with that. And yeah, that's something I just want to, at least in 5 years, I want someone to be able to give me 5 like super incredibly famous UK Black women artists. That's my I'll be happy once I see that.
I love that. That's very specific. I like that. You have to have very specific goals, you know?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, for sure. BEKA, what are your thoughts on the next 5 years?
Yeah, I feel like there's this irony of everybody that I work with is a white male, and loads of the white males are legends and they're my best friends and I love them. And I think when I look at what is going to get us ahead, it's having representation in all areas. So that would then tell me that all areas need to mentor those who don't look like them. And I think there's like this mass mentorship that needs to happen across all of our industries that has a sense of urgency to it, that helps us get rid of the kind of strange dynamic we can have that's like between men and women. Oh God, if I'm a man with a young woman mentoring her, is that going to get weird? It's like, no. And also people kind of being on the front foot with those things. Who can I put into? I'm not successful yet. For me, Will, it was really funny what you were saying earlier, where you're like, oh, have I done anything? Am I anywhere? And I have that conversation every day. And my mum will message me and be like, I can't believe that you're doing this thing. And it's a good reminder. And I'm nowhere but in my head. But actually, there are so many women, I know women and men who the few little threads that I might have, they would benefit from. And so I think something that would really move me and that I want to see is that every label, every company that is within our kind of industry to be hot on being on the front foot of putting into someone else who doesn't look like them. And I think having that training that also says, you know, we do warm to people who look and feel like us. And that's why people keep getting reproduced in, you know, in where they aren't Black people, because there aren't lots of Black people in those positions. So that would be probably the one thing I'd want to see, where you're talking to a CEO of whatever label, and they're like, oh yeah, I know, you know, Joanna, I mentored Joanna, and you're like, oh, who's, you know, see a picture of Joanna, and you're like, okay, I'm seeing some dreads here, this is bringing me some life. Otherwise people we won't have change. And I also think, you know, it's when you are with somebody who doesn't look and feel like you, and you find out something about them that you never categorize that kind of person to have, that we then break down these walls of stereotypes. And I think the one thing I always say to like one of my best friends is that I just want to be in Sainsbury's one day, and I want to see like a grumpy, Sainsbury's, by the way, is like a shopping center in England. I want to see like a grumpy old Black man be treated in the same way that a grumpy old white woman would be treated, where you're not thinking, oh my gosh, he's a bit aggressive, he's a bit scary. You think, oh, bless you, I wonder if you're having a bad day, let me carry your shopping for you. Because I think once we have those changes in our normal everyday life, that's when we're going to have it's a show of real change. And also, Emmavie, you're so right. I mean, literally had this conversation yesterday. Can you name one Black woman to come out of England who's successful? And I was like, someone else asked me that, and I was like, yeah. And then went to name them, I was like, oh, no, I cannot. So I back that also.
Absolutely. No, I think it's really important what you're saying about the industry and the concerted effort in hiring and putting people of color in those positions. You know, we've had a lot of these conversations at my employee resource group at downtown about what it takes to really do that. Because when you go to hire, a lot of the times people are hiring within their network, and, you know, white folks are going to have mostly probably white folks within their network. So it does take a concerted effort to go out, get the recommendations. It's not that the talent pool is small, it's that we're not finding them where they are. We're not offering them the same opportunities. I want to thank all of the panelists here for joining us today. It's been honestly an awesome conversation. Make sure to check everybody out. If you haven't already, me doing my research for this interview, I discovered so many songs that I loved, honestly, and I really discovered some amazing people here. So check out everybody's profiles. Definitely throw them a follow. Again, thank you for coming and joining. My contact is george@songtrust.com. So if you're interested in Songtrust, all of these wonderful people here are clients themselves. So if you're interested in joining, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help walk you through the process. Guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you guys, all the panelists, so much for joining me today. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Happy spring.
You too. Blessings.
Thank you so much. Much love, everyone.
All right, guys.